Hey, what's up, guys? Promised to do some analysis on this solar lunar eclipse cycle, so yeah, let's get down to it. So, first and foremost, I'll start back here, right? We'll start with the key. As you can see, there's different lines all throughout here, and you're like, okay, what the hell does all this shit mean, right? Well, basically, bright yellow total solar eclipse, solar annual hybrid, solar partial, right? Different colors that we see here, right? Same with the lunar. Dark red, bad. These other two, they're considered weak. So our main concern here when we're looking at this is when do these lunar eclipse occurs? And you're asking yourself, like, why do we care when we get a total lunar eclipse, right? Well, one thing that's interesting here is, and I've noticed, I don't think anybody else has really, besides this guy, has really put together this way to categorize the lunar and solar as cycles. I had looked online to see if anybody had kind of done something similar where, when we have total lunar eclipses in a series, we can categorize that as a lunar cycle. And when we do not have lunar total eclipses for a period of time, that could be considered a solar cycle. Now, one thing that has occurred throughout this is that lunar cycles, which is categorized as continuous total lunar eclipses, dictate that a bear market has occurred or has begun. Now, why do I say that? Well, if you look here, this definitely is indicative of a bear market, right? And interestingly enough, in the last portions, it's kind of marked the generational bottom here, right? For that particular bear market. Oh, let's check 2018, right? We got our lunar eclipse. Looks like we got a little closer to that lunar eclipse before we topped, right? And then lo and behold, end of the lunar cycle, generational bottom. So what are we in now? Well, 2019 and 2020 were technically our solar cycles. And dun dun dun. Well, GG, it's over. Pack it up, guys, right? A lunar cycle. Every single one, it's been a bear market, right? But something's different. What is different, that you may ask? Every other lunar cycle were consecutive. Every lunar cycle around the beginning of that particular, if you look here, think of these as two different sectors, right? The low of the sector was made very early on. It wasn't until we went into the second total lunar eclipse that we created a new low. And on the final lunar eclipse, just as we saw here, was the low. This cycle differs. Why? Because we don't have consecutive lunar eclipses. We have an outlier. December 4th in late November, the lunar eclipse is quite weak. It's not a total like we saw in these consecutive instances. The other thing is, too, this is the strongest solar cycle. Typically, either leading into them or just after them, we've seen explosive gains in times past on these total solars. Like, they don't mess around, initiating or ending bull cycles. I mean, that's absurd, right? Well, so what does this mean for us, right? Well, to me, it means either leading into or leading out of, we'll likely see some sort of gain, right? Here. Why? Well, technically, we got the effect of this total lunar eclipse, right? This right here was our total lunar eclipse. What would affect us from here until November, December, right? And as we established previously, the low for that particular sector is actually found pretty early on, right, into this lunar cycle sector, right? I think it's safe to say that there's a good chance within this sector we're not going to make it a lower low. And obviously, we'll say too, if we did make another low, I think that would be it. But I think it's safe to say that, generally speaking, we're probably not going to go much lower than here, right? If we had another consecutive one, we could expect a new low to be made entering the next. But it's not. This is different, guys. There's so many macro indicators. So here, if you ever look at my pinned thread, you'll remember it was around late April. Kind of expressed some concern around the speed at which the market was moving, right, in the cycle. It was too explosive comparatively to prior cycles. I mean, we were technically for a period of time here outpacing the cycle of this, and it's safe to say that each Bitcoin cycle, to a certain degree, will likely see diminishing returns, right? I mean, we've kind of seen that. I think you can extrapolate that pretty fairly, and I think each halving will have a diminished effect on the explosive price movement. You can't expect the same multiplier here to here as you could here to here for here to to here, right? But you can still expect ridiculous gains because this asset class is about a decade old. I mean, it's still new. There's still a lot of money to be made in this market. You're talking in terms of, I mean, obviously, when people talk about mass adoption, yes, there's mass adoption of shitcoins when they're going vertical, right? But true mass adoption is, that's a multi-decade effort. It's not something that occurs overnight. But anyways, the whole point of this is that, in late April, I was kind of saying, hey, if we are premature, which it felt premature, and we weren't going to the top of the regression line, which at the time was around 80,000. And we said, the longer this takes, the higher we can go. And this was a bit explosive. And in that thread I'd mentioned, I could see us going down at 36K. Obviously, we went, that was late April. We went lower than 36K, right? But I mean, you're talking cryptocurrency, specific levels like that ahead of time, especially when you're talking on dumps. It's pretty difficult to nail that level. But we're pretty close to around there. When this happened, it didn't really this dump. This is gonna sound fucked up and weird, but it kind of gave me a sense of relief in a way, because I was stressing the hell out here in April. I'll be honest with you, it's like, this is too much too fast. It was almost uncomfortable. But now everything's nuked to shit. And now everyone, I'd say 80% of your influencers are probably saying, hey, there's no way in hell we're still in a bull market, right? Which, traditionally speaking, yeah, it usually did indicate that, right? But this was not in these particular instances, right? So now that we've taken into consideration that the low is established pretty early on for that particular sector, early on into the first eclipse cycle, right? Low established for this sector. I'm going to go down a limb and say that the low is probably established for this sector too. I don't think we can expect anything much lower even through November, December, right? at worst, you might just ride that level. And the next question is, does this kind of act as a leading, like we saw here? Or is it, we don't see explosive movement until we pass it, right? I think both are viable, to be quite honest. And quite frankly, I'm not really too concerned which path it does take. I think that's less important than trying to determine the destination, right? So, yeah. If you guys want, I'll link you to this, but I think it was worth sharing. It might have been, kind of an interesting observation in how we've interacted and how this cycle is very unique. I mean, you look at the future lunar cycles, they're consecutive, This one's not consecutive. The past ones were consecutive. So this was too much too fast. This alleviated our too much too fast, right? And this will kind of give us this, although it was too much and too fast, it wasn't enough. Bitcoin doesn't do this and just GG, it's over. You know what I mean? You don't get months to press the red button. And they give you months to press the red button, and then all I gotta say is that's, regardless if it's a lead up into or afterwards, it should be interesting. The other part is if we get a lead up into this, then we can probably expect something like January, late December, early January. It's GG, it's over, right? But if we don't get a whole lot of movement and then suddenly get explosive movement here, it might be safe to say that we don't see the decline start to occur till we get closer to here, which is like that May, June 2022 area, when we get that next total eclipse. And as we pointed out previously, we get closer and closer to that lunar eclipse each time, that total lunar eclipse. So I'd kind of keep in mind that late December, early January, maybe even leading into anywhere from April, May, June 2022 would kind of be like dates of interest. Obviously, when the time comes, I'd like to kind of establish this mental model beforehand, because it was a little easier here establishing a bullish mental model, when no one gave a shit, right? And then here, we'd considered some of the bearish scenarios, right? We're like, okay, we're a little ahead of schedule, let's take a break. And then, now here it's like you get your mass panic, everyone's pissing and pooping their pants, and oh gosh, it's over, it's GG, it's the bear market, it's just like, shut the fuck up. Anyways, if you guys liked it, I would tell you to like and subscribe, but I really don't give a shit.